button. And good evening, everybody, and welcome to our Cheese and Wine virtual tasting. And it's Nichols and the Perks, of course. We've got almost a record crowd in tonight, so I hope you're looking forward to experimenting with some wines and some cheeses. So I'm going to be talking through this with my colleague Callum. We'd encourage you to use the chat facility as we go along and ask any questions, make any comments. Do tell us in particular what cheeses you've decided to try this evening with the wines as we go through them, because we sent out some suggestions a while back so that you could maybe get a few cheeses in to try, but obviously these are only guidelines and it's very much up to you. You might have your own personal favorites, so let's see how we go. Okay, so I'm going to change the order around a little bit for those of you who've been before, and let's just talk about getting the most out of your wine glass in terms of flavour. We talk about sniff, swirl and slurp. The idea of sniffing is to use your nose to identify lots of flavours and aromas. You've got this wonderful thing called the olfactory bulb, which is your database of flavours and aromas, which will differentiate thousands, literally thousands of different flavours and aromas, whereas on your tongue, of course, you only have a very small number, probably about 5 or 6 maximum. So we're pairing with cheese tonight, so it's particularly valuable to be able to set your palate, because we've got 5 quite different wines, and hopefully you've got lots of different cheeses to go with these. So it's particularly useful to have a really small sip of the wine to begin with. That kind of sets your palate. Then have a little nibble of the cheese, and then go back and have a further sip of the wine. And you can keep doing that as long as you have cheese and wine to do it with. Okay, let's move on then, and we'll talk a little bit about the cheese. And let's just get a few more people. We've got some late arrivals. So let's do that. Callum, can you make sure that you mute them if we've got any marauding intruders?
No problem.
Okay, so if you find yourself hovering around the cheese board at the dinner table and sneaking back for second or third or even fourth helping, there may be actually a scientific explanation as to why you're unable to tear yourself away. Researchers from Michigan University a little while ago revealed that cheese contains a chemical found in addictive drugs. Using the Yale Food Addiction Scale, yes, it exists, as designed to measure a person's cravings, the study found that cheese is particularly moreish because it contains a substance called casein. This chemical, which is found in all dairy products, can trigger the brain's opioid receptors, which produces a feeling of euphoria linked to those of hard drug addiction. It actually casein comes from the Latin caseus, which means cheese. And it's a family of related phosphoproteins. These proteins are normally found in mammalian milk, and that comprises about 80% of the proteins in cow's milk, and between 20 and about 45% of the proteins in human milk. So a big sample of students were asked to compare a questionnaire to identify different food cravings. And as part of the study, pizza came top of the list as the most addictive food of all. Additionally, they found that top-ranking foods on the addiction scale were those containing cheese. The scientists studying dairy products found that in milk, casein has a minuscule dosage, but considering that when you produce a pound of cheese, you require about 10 pounds of milk, that addictive substance coagulating in the solid milk fats and separating them from the liquids, as a result, gives you a super strength chemical which becomes really concentrated when in this solid form. So you'll basically get a higher hit of addictive substance by tucking into a cheese sandwich than you would in your morning bowl of cereal. So having set the scene for you sensation seekers, I'm going to actually make a little announcement. We have a couple of birthday boys in this evening. So on behalf of Nichols and Perks and the conniving spouses of these guys, who I don't think realise that they're about to be named and shamed, happy birthday to Stephen Evans and Neil Jameson. You might consider yourselves fortunate that we're not doing this down the cellar, because at that point we would all be breaking into song, not necessarily completely tunefully. So happy birthday to you. Okay, so straight away let's get into our first one. The first one is the 2018 Sepp Moser, and this comes from Austria. Austria has got 3 major wine growing regions all over in the east side of the country there. I'm not going to trip myself up and try and pronounce the true Austrian name, so we're just going to call it Lower Austria, which is at the top, and Burgenland, which I can get my teeth around, and Styria, which is towards the south. And the little area we're talking about in particular is the Kronstadt. You see that, Kronstadt? There are basically 16 smaller wine regions across these 3 big ones, and Kronstadt is really one of the smallest. It only comprises about 2,000 hectares, just a little over. And Kronstadt is also quite a new appellation there. And it's been a sort of regulated appellation in Austria since about 2007. And it's basically producing Grüne Veltliner, which is what we're going to be trying this evening, and also very kind of dry minerally Rieslings. So as it's only been around as a recognized wine region since 2007, it's an interesting sort of modern approach with a lot of tradition as well. So it's like the best of both worlds. So Kronstadt DAC, which stands for Districtus Austria Controllers, which is obviously the Austrian equivalent of an appellation contrôlé, like France's AOC or Italy's DOCG, is one of only 10 such appellations within Austria. So high quality wines, mostly Grüne Veltliner, which is what we're trying this evening. So the CEO of the Austrian Wine Marketing Association is convinced that this is an up-and-coming region. He says that Kronstadt is a nationally and internationally recognized wine region. The new DAC strengthens our attempts toward typical wines of designation of origin. So very much a region, I think, to keep your eye on if you've not come across it before. So let's drill down a little more deeply there. So this is Kronstadt, as you can see in the middle. And apologies for the slightly fuzzy map there, but it's not your eyesight, but that's the best we could find, which shows these features. Interestingly, you can see the famous Blue Danube River flowing through it there, so it roughly bisects the region. So let's have a look in more detail at the Sepp Moser estate. It's founded by a famous Austrian wine producing pioneer, Lenz Moser, and his son was Sepp Moser, who began operating under his own name in 1987 and handed over the direction of his family-owned estate to his own son, Nicholas, who took the reins over about 20 years ago. Not a massive place, it's about 50 acres of vineyards, and it produces a few different varieties, but concentrating very much on the local Grüne Veltliner. The grapes are harvested by hand, and at the cellar they emphasize very, very gentle vinification. They try to interfere as little as possible with the process, so that each wine can develop its own individual style. The fermentation also starts spontaneously, and the maturing of the wine also takes place on its own. So this is kind of very minimal intervention. Interestingly, the family, you can see them there, they officially moved the estate to biodynamic viticulture, one of the first to do so in Austria, and it became Demeter certified. So they are both organic and biodynamic. So they have reduced the amount of copper and sulfur that they use in the vineyards by about 2/3 over what was previously being done. They compost all the estate's pomace and vine trimmings, and there's an ongoing effort to plant trees. So one of the attributes of being biodynamic is that you try and view your kind of domain as a holistic entity, and everything that you do to it is based on restoring a natural balance and making it stronger and more viable. So after hand harvesting at the end of September, the spontaneous fermentation takes place in stainless steel tanks. Malolactic fermentation, which we talked about before, also takes place, and the wine is resting on the fine lees, that's the dead yeast cells, to give it a little bit more body. It's bottled at the end of June without any filtration or addition of sulfur. So let's give it a little taste, shall we? I can hear that. I can hear Callum slurping and sniffing away there. Good man. I think we've got some lovely kind of stone fruit flavors. There's a lot going on. There's layers of sort of sharp things like pepper and flint, which gives you minerality, citrus acidity, and then some stone fruits as well. So this, I'd be interested to know what cheese you're trying this with, guys. I've got some goat's cheese to go with this, and I think that works really well. Oh, Debbie and Evelyn, buffalo mozzarella tricolore salad to start with homemade bread. Yikes!
Nice.
Neil's got 12 cheeses. I'm well impressed. That's 2 and a bit per wine. That's fantastic. You're really you obviously you're going to be hitting those dopamine and opioid receptors. That's terrific. So I think this is a natural wine in every sense of the word. It's slightly wild, but it's got enough kind of classic balance and restraint to compare it with the classic Gruner characteristics. But it's quite unusual. Every year will probably taste slightly different. What do you think of this one, Cal?
Yeah, I like it too. As you say, a lot of citrus, a lot of stone fruits, a little kind of flinty edge on the nose. Bit of like reductive smoke as well. It's quite full-bodied as well, which is quite impressive. So you get that kind of ripe, rich fruit, but the acidity cuts through.
Yeah,
I think it's very good. Yeah, very good.
John's got goat's cheese from Somerset. I've actually got goat's cheese from Abergavenny this evening. And now Neil's going to die of cheese poisoning with white Stilton. Délice de Crémière in Wiltshire. Very good. So glad to see everyone's getting into the cheese things. Now, have you tried it by itself, then the cheese, then try it again, and see how it actually changes? Do let us know what you're thinking there. We're actually having this in the sale, and considering this is both organic, biodynamic, lots of hands-on procedures, I think £12.51 is really, really good. This has got a lingering flavour. So whilst you talk about cheeses and things amongst yourself, let's have a look at what biodynamic wine is. It's becoming more prevalent in winemaking. So I don't know whether you guys know much about it or not, but it's something that tends to divide opinion when it comes to biodynamics. It's been called many things on the more positive side, sort of holistic and sustainable, through to voodoo witchcraft and Harry Potter does winemaking. So it meets with some criticism, largely because many of its most integral practices can't be explained scientifically. But with the biodynamic processes are becoming far more mainstream now in the wine industry. I mean, significantly over the last few decades, there's some serious big names. I mean, Carol, you know some of them. Some of the very prestigious Burgundy and Bordeaux producers are using biodynamics.
Yeah, for example, Domaine Romani Conti, which possibly the most famous domain producer in the world, they use it, as do several other Burgundian estates, also in Bordeaux. Some of the top guys there, so Chateau Ponticane, for example, Chateau Parma in Margaux. These top guys, some of the most expensive, most illustrious chateau and producers are operating this way. So, there's got to be something in it, Tim.
Well, this is what I think. I mean, I'm not sure how you can objectively measure some of the things, but certainly it's not like a sort of indulgence. If you've got some of these, very prestigious and expensive wines where there's a lot financially and reputationally at stake, you're not going to be messing around too much with your processes in case you come a cropper.
Well, I'll just touch on that as well. For example, Chateau Parma in 2017, they didn't make a wine because of it. So the potential pitfalls are devastating, but they continue to do it because they trust in the quality of it. So I think that says it all, really.
Yeah. Well, certainly reports have suggested that when people have converted to biodynamic wine production, eventually the farm or the vineyard becomes kind of more self-sustaining because you've got a kind of complete ecosystem there which kind of looks after itself and deals with whatever nature throws at it. The philosophy itself is based on the works of Rudolf Steiner. He gave a series of 8 lectures on agriculture back in the 1920s, and it's strongly linked to his thinking on anthroposophy, which is a form of philosophy that places human beings at the center of everything, but acknowledges all the other influences around physical, emotional, life experience, etc., that go into making a being. So by looking at and understanding all these influences in relation to the vineyard, the idea is that you can better appreciate what actions can be taken to help address any imbalances. They've got a lot of preparations that they use, and these are a bit like homeopathic remedies, where they've got 9 different preparations which are laid out by Steiner as being central to biodynamics. And it's certainly true that in order to become certified, all these preparations have to be adopted. So they should all ideally be made from materials that are sourced from within the farm or the vineyard, in line with this notion of self-sustaining. Not always possible or practical, but those who start off certainly seem to stick with it. Some of these preparations, you can see the use of a cow's horn there. The idea is you fill that with fresh manure, ideally from local cows that have been reared organically or preferably biodynamically, and then you bury that underground during the winter. Once you dig it up, you then dilute it with water, and it becomes dynamized. So process of vigorous stirring, first in one direction and then in the other, creates a vortex in the liquid, and these dynamic energies create the stirring creates are said to become concentrated in the solution, enhancing its effectiveness once sprayed onto the soil. As I said, I'm not saying this is definitely the way to do it, but out of all the biodynamic wines that we taste from time to time, they all seem to have a certain, dare I say, je ne sais quoi, certainly an extra layer of personality, which you don't always find in others.
Yeah, it's like a certain energy, I would say, Tim.
Yeah. So that's a parting shot there of Kremstal, the little village with the river in the background. So I think I've probably said enough for a bit now. Over to you, Cal.
Cheers, Tim.
Who are these dudes?
Yeah, so second wine of the evening is the 2015 Licura 1 Chardonnay from Clos de Fou in the Alto Cachapal in Chile. Now, similarly to its neighbor, Argentina, Chile's winemaking roots are actually in Spain. Now, during the 16th century, the Spanish conquistadors brought vines with them as they colonized the region, and the cultivation of the grape and wine production began. Now, in the early 1980s, a renaissance began in the Chilean wine industry with the introduction of stainless steel fermentation tanks and the use of oak barrels for aging. And in the late 20th century, a large number of French people immigrated to Chile, bringing more vinicultural and viticultural knowledge to the country, which in turn increased the quality of the wine produced and led to a rapid growth in exports. Now, today, Chile is the world's 7th largest wine producing country, just behind Australia in 6th. And like South America, like its South American counterparts, rather, is now responsible for some of the finest wines in the world. Okay, so you'll see a map of Chile on the left, and it's with its primary wine-producing regions. So you have the Atacama region in the north, you have the Aconcagua and Central Valley regions in the middle, and this area is responsible for some of the finest Cabernet Sauvignon produced in the world. And then to the south, you have the South and Austral regions. Now, the Chardonnay, the one we're going to taste now, is actually from Chile's Central Valley, and more specifically from the northern part of the Rapel Valley, which is known as the Cachapal Valley. Now, as you'll be able to see, you have the Pacific Ocean to the west and the Andes to the east, both of which contribute to the area's Mediterranean climate. Now, this Chardonnay we're tasting, as I mentioned, is from Chile's Central Valley. Now, it's from more specifically the Cachapal Valley, as it says, and what this does, it shares its name with the river flowing through the center, which you'll see on the map. Now, this river, like the Pacific Ocean, acts as a heat moderator to the area, and in turn aids the phenolic ripeness of the grapes grown here, but I'll touch on that in a second. Now, the eastern edge of the wide valley is marked by the western slopes of the Andes, and the Andes protect the valley from prevailing winds and also heavy rainfall. Now, the Alto Cachapal, where this wine is from specifically, is actually slightly more elevated than the rest of the valley, and is where slopes rise from the warmer valley floor, meaning longer hours of sunlight in the day, yet cooler temperatures at night. And what this does is, again, contribute to the balance of phenolic ripeness, which is the ripening of skins, seeds, and pips, but also sugar ripeness, which is the breaking down of acids and accumulation of sugar in the grapes. Now, another factor of influence on the quality of the wines here is the soils. Now, the soils of the Alto Cachapal are comprised of colluvial gravel and sand, having been deposited in the valley over time from the slopes of the Andes. Now, it's these free draining soils that restricts yields and vigor, which leads to small concentrated berries that produce dense and well-structured wines. Let's give it a bit of a nose. Now, the vintage of this wine, 2015, and 2015 is regarded as an excellent vintage in the Rapel Valley and the Cachapal Valley. Now, a rainy winter at the start of the 14-15 season helped to accumulate enough water for the entire growing season. January was very cloudy, but February was particularly clear and a bit warmer than usual, which allowed harvest to begin at the end of the month, with good, crisp and aromatic skins with the correct sugar and acidity levels. All in all, fruit showed quality and concentration, which is very important. Now, you'll see an image on the back. These are the guys from Clos de Fou. Now, we've actually been working, Nicholas Perks has been working with Clos de Fou for about 5 years now, but the property dates back as far as 2008. Now, Clos de Fou, it's actually a joint project by 4 friends, Pedro Parra, Francois Massoc, Paco Leighton, and Albert Cousin. Now, these 4 friends, they were tired of hearing the Chilean wine was boring, it was industrial, green and overripe. So they set out in search of the dark side of the moon, Tim. Now, Francois and Pedro, they're actually long-time friends, and both have spent much time abroad making wine and working in the vineyards of Europe. Now, Pedro actually has a master's degree in precision agriculture and a PhD for his work with terroir, and currently consults as a terroir specialist around the globe in Argentina, Oregon, Italy, France, Spain, Georgia, to name a few. He's actually also worked with renowned vigneron Jean-Marc Rouleau of Burgundy, and this guy, he makes some of the finest Chardonnay known to man. So what I'm trying to get at is that the guys at Clos de Fou, they know what they're doing. Now, the actual philosophy at Clos de Fou is to produce exciting wines from grapes grown in extreme terroir with minimal intervention in the winery. Now, for me, it's one of Chile's most innovative, inspiring, and authentic wineries, and actually produces some of the most exciting wines in the whole of South America. You might find interesting the word fou actually translates from French into crazy men, which is a reference to what their peers described as their craziness in crossing the traditional vineyard boundaries of Chile. Now, with regards to the winemaking of this wine, work in both the vineyards and the winery is relatively minimal. Whole bunches of grapes are hand harvested. They're brought to the winery, they're pressed. Free-run juice is collected in stainless steel tanks for an alcoholic fermentation. Now, interestingly, there is no malolactic fermentation in this wine. However, the wine is aged on lees, so the dead yeast cells, for about 12 months, with only 5% aged in oak. Once the aging is complete, the Chardonnay is blended, fine, filtered, and ready for bottling. Now it's time for a proper taste. Yeah, so it's pale yellow in color, maybe a tint of green. The nose offers aromas, got white peach, pear, quite floral too. Palate's fresh. There's a subtle flavour of butter, which will come from that small amount of oak aging, but also the lees contact. And this combines really well with, I think, the bright citrus and stone fruits. For me, excellent balance and complexity, a lot going on. You also get a kind of persistent saline mineral flavour on the back, which is really quite impressive. The white, it actually reminds me of an unoaked Chablis in a way, with that kind of minerality coming through. Interestingly, this wine received a big score from wine publication, The Wine Advocate, from their Chilean correspondent, Luis Gutierrez. He gives it 92 points out of 100, which is a massive score. I can certainly see why. Now, in terms of price, this wine is currently in the February sale, 15% off at the moment, and it's £14 and 14 pence. So, you know, it's a great buy. Now, with regards to cheese pairing, you can go this wine anywhere from Camembert to Shropshire Blue. You know, Chardonnay is a very versatile grape in all kinds of food pairing, to be honest. I've actually gone for some Swiss Emmental.
That's a good choice, I think, Cal. Certainly that nut is. I thought I'd be a bit braver on this one, and whilst I know Emmental works extremely well, I've actually gone for some Shropshire Blue on this because you've got a little bit of nuttiness and just a touch of fruitiness on the back there with the Shropshire Blue, as well as the little piquancy there. And I think this is a wine that's big enough to be able to kind of cope with that.
Yeah,
I'm interested. Sorry, Cal, go on.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, the Emmental, again, you get it's quite fruity, but you get that nuttiness as well, which I think works really well with that subtle richness from the oak, but also the freshness cuts through really nicely. But you know, as you mentioned, Shropshire Blue, Emmental, pretty versatile.
That's right. I think Chardonnay is actually one of the most versatile grape varieties of all. A lot of people intuitively would be thinking of red wine as being the go-to color of wine for cheese pairing, but in fact, the reverse is often truer. White wines are sometimes a lot easier to pair because of the interaction of red wine with tannin, which we'll talk about a little bit later on. So yeah, anyway, it's great. So I think it's, look, with all this cheese munching going on, let's ask a question. So I can nearly spell, who eats the most cheese per capita? Is it the French, the Germans, the Danish, the Swiss, the Finlandians, or the UK?
No one thinks the Finnish team.
Right, I'm going to count this down. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Speak or forever hold your peace. Right. So people think, although not by a lot, that the French consume more cheese than anybody else. Okay, there's an interesting spread there. Let's actually have a look. It's close. The French, this I think goes back to 2018. The Danish and the Finnish and the Icelandics actually vie with the French on a year-by-year basis to consume the most cheese. So yeah, you can see that there's just a tiny bit, 100 grams in a whole year. per capita between the Finnish and the French. The UK is woefully behind these stalwarts of cheese consumption. The UK consumes approximately half what these top guys do, about 12 kilos per person on average, compared with the French and the others. So there we go. Right. After that little bit of divertissement, let's have a look. I thought this was interesting. So this is about estimated UK self-sufficiency in cheese production. So for good old cheddar, we're just over 90% self-sufficient, as you would probably expect. Interestingly, mozzarella is making a bit of a leap forward as well. That's got to be more than 75%, nearly 80% self-sufficient in mozzarella production in the UK. But overall, we still need to import the stuff. We are less than 60% self-sufficient in cheese. So I will let you chew on that. Right, let's go to Italy. We are going to northwest Italy, specifically Piedmont. And this is an area that's actually quite large in Italian regional terms. It's about 25,500 square kilometers. That makes it the second largest region of Italy after Sicily down there. It's got a population of well over 4 million, and the capital is Turin. There's the flag, if you're interested. There's a bit of local history there. And let's have a look in a little bit more detail to the breakdown of the region. We're actually going to Alba, around here, and let's also have a look at the different sort of levels of Italian wine designation, because you'll see various things on labels and you think, well, what does that mean? So back in the 1960s, Italy's system was established to differentiate between different levels of wine, different qualities of wine. It's gone through a number of updates and refinements. So the modern version is here in front of you, and it's basically got 4 tiers. So at the top of the tree, you've got DOCG, and this is a protected designation of origin. That also applies to DOC as well. It's a guide to quality, but there are some exceptions. Some Italian wineries opt out of the rules applicable to these top 2 tiers because they can be very restrictive in terms of the sort of grapes that you can use and what you can do with them. But from the top of the tree there, DOCG stands for Denominazioni di Origine Controllata e Garantia.
Easy for you to say that, Tim.
I've just about got away with that. The first few DOCGs were introduced in 1980, and there's still relatively few. There's about between 70 and 80 across the whole of Italy. They've got very stringent quality controls there, although these can only be compared to the previous DOC status rather than other DOCs. So basically, all the wines undergo analysis and testing by government approved examiners. So wines bottled under this status are required to include a label on the neck, which is pink for red wines and green for white wines. So next one down then, DOC. This is the biggest sort of quality chunk. There are about 330 DOCs, which stands for Denominazioni di Origine Controllata. And they represent the sort of big chunk of quality Italian wine. They've got rules that are fairly strict and based on geographical areas. Once again, analysis and testing is done by government approved agencies. So it's a misnomer actually that the DOC level is inherently inferior to DOCG. It's just rules. So the next one down then is IGT, which is in the, oh, where's that gone? It's Indicazioni Geografica Tipica. So that's intended to provide a guide to quality, but there are exceptions. Some Italian wineries opt out of those rules as well, in order to free up and give them the opportunity to express themselves. And then at the bottom of the pile, the basic level VDT, which is Vino di Tavola, which is the equivalent of table wine. So that's going to be relatively cheap, but nevertheless cheerful. Okay, so having done that, let's go to specifically Dolcetto d'Alba, and the particular area that we're going to within the broader area there is the Rio Sordo area, which is very close to Barbaresco village itself, and is a very highly rated local vineyard area, and it's got a high composition of limestone, which the Dolcetto grapes particularly like. Now, Dolcetto itself takes the name from the slightly sweet sensation it's possible to get after tasting one of the actual grapes. But this is a dry wine. It's produced in this case by the Musa winery, and they've got a fabulous southwest facing vineyard, which has got quite heavy terrain with lime and clay composition at a slightly higher altitude than normal around there. It's about 250 meters above sea level. So it's a family owned business. Once again, we had the pleasure of hosting these guys last year, and we looked at a lot of their different wines. I thought it'd be nice to revisit one of those, specifically pairing it with cheese this evening. Once again, we're talking about hand harvesting. The resulting juice or must is subject to quite a short alcoholic fermentation and a short maceration. So we're talking about 5 to 6 days resting on the skins to get a little bit of extraction, a little bit of color, a little bit of tannin. They use thermo-conditioned stainless steel tanks so that the working temperatures don't creep above the optimum for this particular process, which is between about 23 and 25 degrees. Now that compares with other red wines which are more tannic, like the next one we're going to try, which will go for a longer maceration, longer fermentation at a higher temperature. Once again, after the alcoholic fermentation, there's malolactic fermentation, which allows the wine to have a little bit of more sort of roundness and stability. After that, they rest the wine in the tanks for several months. And after that, it stays for a further couple of months in 40 hectoliter barrels. And that just gives that little bit of touch of oakiness, but not too much. It's quite a subtle wine, this. So the actual bottling takes place in the middle of the spring, the year after harvest. And then it spends a couple of months just settling in the bottle, kind of stabilizing, just aging a little bit. Then it's allowed to be sold. So a lot of Dolcetto is really quite young, quite fresh, quite fragrant. This actually has attributes of that, but also because the vines are quite old they use, remember vines that are old tend to produce a greater concentration of flavors. So the taste, I think, is quite obviously dry, but you've got some lovely fruitiness there. Some cherry, some plum. Let's give this a little taste as well. It's a very versatile wine. So you've got this lovely sort of forward fruitiness, but just that little bit of astringency on the finish. And this is where, again, I think it's going to be interesting to pair it with some cheese. We're sort of in the crossover point here. You can try some stronger, harder cheeses. Pecorino, I think I said, Gouda. The local cheese, Fontina d'Aosta. I've tried this with raclette, which is an interesting one, because raclette is a cheese that tends to be used because of its melting qualities. You use a lot with fondue. With fondue, you quite often have a white wine, but raclette itself has got a little bit of underlying earthiness, and I think that just pairs very nicely with this. So What do you think, Cal? What are you guys pairing with this particular cheese? You tell us.
Yeah, I mean, I love it, to be honest. I think, you usually associate dolcetto being kind of a fairly simple wine, really fruity on. But it's got layers of complexity. It's quite earthy. You get that kind of kirsch, even like plum liqueur on the nose, but it's almost a savoury edge as well. I think it's excellent, yeah. And that this will continue to age as well, a couple of years, which is relatively unknown, to be fair, for a dolcetto. But such is the location of the vines. As you mentioned in Barbaresco, I mean, Rio Sordo is a Barbaresco cru, so the terroir was like excellent. So yeah, really good.
It's I think one of the things that we hopefully get across this evening is that in their own way, all the wine makers, whether they're larger established ones or slightly smaller domains, I mean, they care about what they do. And it was very evident when we spoke to these guys, this is in their blood. This is a fourth generation again, I think, fourth or fifth even. It started off in the 1920s, right in the middle of the Depression. So that was a difficult and hard time to launch a winery, but they struggled through and they've expanded it a little bit, but not too much. And their wines regularly get tremendous scores from the likes of Decanter, Wine Enthusiast, and others. So again, we import this directly. You won't find it in any supermarkets, I don't think, because they're not going to be able to produce the volume that's going to be required. So hope you like that one. Let's have a look at what the current state of the vineyard is. This was off their website quite recently. It's quite a recent picture, so I think they've had a little bit of snow there in northeast Italy. So no doubt that's going to form a little blanket. Hope it doesn't get too cold for too long there. And that's their mosaic, which stands very proudly in the courtyard of their family-owned vineyard. And finally, look at that. That's Barbaresco and the beautiful rolling hills of the vines there. I don't think you're going to get many tractors up there. Do you, Cal?
Nah, definitely not, mate.
Okay, let's have a look at another silly question. So, I mentioned earlier on that I tried a bit of Shropshire Blue with one of the cheeses. So, is Shropshire Blue cheese made in Shropshire? Sometimes I don't ask trick questions, so just go with what you think. I shall count down. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ignition. Okay, so 57% of you agree that Shropshire Blue is made in Shropshire. However, I have to say that the cheese is now made by by a creamery in Leicestershire, and also in Nottinghamshire, made by Long Clawson in Leicestershire and the Cropwell Bishop and Colston Bassett dairies in Nottinghamshire. So, would you Adam and Eve it? Right, Cal, I'm going to hand over to you now.
Okay, Tim. Cheers. So next one of the evening is the 2018 Kerlan from Domaine Everine in the Southern Rhone in France. Now you'll see a map of the entire Rhone Valley, which is located in the southwest of France, in front of you. So you have the Northern Rhone. Northern Rhone is home to the famous appellations of Côte-Rôtie, Condrieu, Saint-Joseph, Hermitage, and Cornas. You then got the Southern Rhone, which is home to appellations such as Gigondas, Lirac, and of course Châteauneuf-du-Pape, which I'm sure you all aware of. But also the appellation where this wine is from that we're going to taste now, called Kerlan. Hope my pronunciation there is okay there, Tim. I know you fluent in French.
I just thought you were having a cough and a sneeze.
Well, yeah, you'll have to bear with me. But so in a minute you'll see a map of the Southern Rhone. There you go. So you'll see Queyran on the map there. Now that's just to the east of Orange, and it's a small distance from the banks of the Rhone River. Now, with regards to climate of this appellation, it is very much a Mediterranean climate with low yearly rainfall and high sunshine levels, especially during the summer months and into the harvest. Also, there's a famous Mistral wind that comes from the north, and this plays a significant cooling role and blows on average 180 days of the year. Now you'll see the image in front of you. This shows you the effects of the Mistral there, with this particular tree almost being pulled out of the ground. So, it's a powerful wind. Now, this particular climate, it allows a range of grape varieties to express their full personality. Thus, red varieties such as Grenache Noir, Syrah, which both go into this wine that we're tasting now, Mourvèdre also, and Sanso, they all thrive in the Southern Rhone. I will point out that white varieties do also, but that is for another tasting, Tim. Yeah.
You bet.
Now, the Rhone Valley, including Queyran, is among the oldest vineyard regions on the planet. Greeks, Romans, medieval popes had a real soft spot for the native grape, rocky soil taste. And today, it's actually one of the most revered wine regions in the world. Now, in a moment, you'll see an image, pyramid. This is the pyramid of the Côte du Rhône classification system. So it's actually a 4-level quality classification. So you have at the bottom Côte du Rhône AOC or Côte du Rhône appellation. You then have Côte du Rhône village. You then have Côte du Rhône village and said village. And finally, you have Cru Côte du Rhône, which are the very best vineyards in the Rhône. So, for example, Châteauneuf-du-Pape in the south, Hermitage in the north, but also Queyran. Now, with regards to the history of Queyran, it actually received Côte du Rhône status back in 1953. It then was promoted to appellation Côte du Rhône village in 1967. Now, the quality of the vineyards and the vineyard sites in Queyran of such quality, in 2008, winemakers first submitted their application for cru status to the INAO, and that's Institut National des Appellations d'Origine. Now, finally, in 2016, so 8 years on from the first application, the request was finally approved. Now, in a moment, you'll see a quote from Denis Alleray, and he's the president of the Syndicate de Vignerons de Queyran. Get that quote up, Tim?
It's there.
There, yeah. So he states, now, for us, promotion to cru status is an acknowledgement of the huge improvements we've made to the quality of both our white and red wines. So this upgrade or promotion, if you like, is a massive milestone in the small appellation's history. Now, with regard to the soils of Queyran, they're predominantly limestone and alluvial types, which is due to the presence of several local rivers and streams. There is also a red iron-rich earth over sandstone bedrocks that can be found throughout the appellation. Now, this combination of soil types allows for balance between freshness and minerality. You get this from the limestone, but also power and richness, which comes from the iron-rich and clay sandstone. Now, we've been working, Nichols and Perks have been working with domain Ephraim for a few years now, but the domain actually dates back as far as 2008, when current proprietor Denis Monnier purchased the vineyards from the former domain of Rabas. Now, domain Ephraim is actually named after a legend of the nymph or fairy, Ephraim. And I'm going to read that out to him. I'm going to read this tale out for you. So here we go. In a day of great drought, which dried up the sources, of a thirsty shepherd was herding his sheep at Combe de la Pauline, facing the village of Queyran. He was offered by a nymph a drink combining elegance, softness, and character. He enjoyed this drink with great pleasure. The nymph Evaine, touched by the enthusiasm of the shepherd, gave him the secret of the development of this nectar and the privilege of growing grapes in this place where she was watching. Thus, domain Evaine was born. There you go, Tim.
Ah, and they all lived happily ever after.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a nice tale.
Yeah, so today, proprietors, Caroline and Denis Monnier, their entire domain covers 30 hectares in total across the Southern Rhone, with 22 hectares in the appellation of Queyran. And they're really making fantastic wine, and actually 100% organic certified too. Now, what this means is that organic wine is made from grapes grown in accordance with principles of organic farming, which typically excludes the use of artificial chemical fertilizers, pesticides, fungicides, and herbicides. So there you go. Let's give it a nose. So the vintage, this wine is 2018. And 2018 is regarded as a very good vintage in the southern Rhone. Now, despite a devastating attack of mildew, which hit the region in the spring, those who escaped the worst actually enjoyed a very hot and dry summer, which resulted in juicy and generous wines. Now, surprisingly good, in fact. Now, with regards to the winemaking, the Grenache and Syrah grapes, they're hand harvested and they're vinified separately. The Grenache is actually vinified in a stainless steel vat or stainless steel vats, and the Syrah in French oak. Now, once the alcoholic fermentation and malolactic fermentation is complete, the wine's then aged for about 12 months with a small proportion aged in oak, very small, about 3%. They're then fine, filtered, blended, and ready for bottling. Now, you'll be interested to know that the final blend of this wine is 60% Grenache and 40% Syrah. Now it's time for a proper taste. So it's kind of quintessential Southern Rhone, almost like a baby Chateauneuf. A lot of red fruits coming through, and that's from the high proportion of the Grenache. So strawberry and red cherries. Definitely a lot of red fruits, even black cherry, that kind of thing. There's also some black as well. On the palate, a bit more kind of warmer, which is from the level of alcohol. So Grenache brings a slightly elevated level of alcohol, but which also adds to the body. So you get a bit of blackberry, maybe licorice I'm getting, but quite a nice texture, full texture. Bit of spice there as well, Tim. You think that kind of Gary Mediterranean spice coming through?
Yeah, definitely. You've got some sort of the sort of herbal end of things. You've got that kind of wild thyme and rosemary and that sort of thing. Just a little whiff of that.
And that's quintessential southern France, isn't it? Really?
Oh yeah. I mean, actually, you quite literally smell it in the air if you're walking around this sort of area. The wind. I mean, the Mistral wind, which you mentioned earlier on, is it actually lends itself to organic viticulture because it blows so consistently. It doesn't just gust. It blows when Mistral comes in. It will sometimes blow for many days at a time.
Yeah.
And that literally blows the cobwebs away. You get these beautiful clear skies, which is why the Impressionists flocked to the south of France. This isn't very far from the sort of territory that people like Van Gogh and Cézanne went to, because you've got this luminous, great big blue, vivid sky with no clouds. There's no diffuse light. It's just this fabulous texture.
Yeah.
But down on the ground, you've got very little in the way of mildew or little pests that kind of land on things. It just blows them away. So if you're going to go organic anywhere, it's probably not a bad place to go.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's an excellent wine, excellent balance between that richness, but there's real freshness, freshness, which you wouldn't always associate with wines from, south of France. I think it offers excellent value for money. Again, this is in our February fine wine sale. It's actually down 20% to under £10 a bottle, so £9.94. Now, with regards to the cheese pairing, Tim, I think this wine, it pairs excellently with mature cheddar, manchego even. But I've gone for one of my favorite cheeses, which is Comté. Now, Comté is from the Jura area of France, bordering Switzerland. And what Comté gives is a kind of fruity but savory flavor at the same time. It's quite a complex cheese, and I think it works brilliant with the richness, as I mentioned, but also the freshness of this wine. What do you think about it?
I do, and I think again, I'd like to get everyone's sort of comments on that, because this is, I think, out of the wines we've had this evening, this demonstrates very well why a strongish red wine with a fair bit of tannin, whilst you might be able to savor it and enjoy it by itself, by putting some cheese with it, particularly some hard and mature cheese, where a lot of the initial moisture is evaporated out, so you've got left with a concentration of protein and fat. Chemically, what goes on in your mouth, if you take a lump of cheese and you chew it, you've got obviously a sort of fatty sensation, and that will tend to stick around your tongue and your palate. Conversely, put the cheese to one side for a minute. If you have a sip of something that's got quite a lot of tannin in, whether it's green tea or whether it's a strongish red wine, that will leave you with a slightly ruffled drying sensation around your tongue and your gums. Now, the two things together actually work in complement with each other. So if you take a little bit of cheese, that slight stickiness that stays on your tongue, have a sip of red wine with a bit of tannin in, and the tannin combines with the protein and literally cleanses the palate. The protein will kind of clump together and it will take away that slightly cloying, fatty, greasy sensation. The tannin will, by sort of evidence, be reduced in terms of its appearance in the palate. So it is a lovely balance. It's a well-balanced diet, isn't it? And there are reasons why you just have to keep going back and nibbling a bit more cheese and having a little bit more wine, because you just get, the need to restore that equilibrium. So what a way to go. So Comte, yeah, a lot of you guys have got Comte. That's good. That's good. And Manchego. I think I live with James May. He'd eat baby well, says Kevin. Yeah. Okay. Right. Well, let's have a look at our next and final cues. That's just a passing au revoir to Domaine Everine. So now we're getting back to Bordeaux. We've done lots and lots of stuff with Bordeaux. There's the main Bordeaux regions, and we've explored quite a lot of these left and right bank regions, but we're actually going a bit further south now to Sauternes. And Bordeaux is an interesting place in many ways. The history of winemaking there spans a couple of thousand years back to Roman times. There was a big British connection when one of our Henrys, Henry the Plantagenet, got married to Eleanor of Aquitaine back in the Middle Ages, and that opened the Bordeaux region to the English market and eventually the world stage. So the City du Vin, which is brings it up to the 21st century, is this rather futuristic construction that you see there. It gives a different view of wine across the world and across the ages. The architecture of the building is designed to represent a gnarled old vine stock with wine swirling in the glass. So there we go. So that'll be an interesting juxtaposition to show you. So zooming in a little bit further there. So there's the broad Bordeaux region there. And we're going quite south to Sauternes. And Sauternes is famous for its sweet wines. But let's explain a little bit why that's the case. So in Sauternes, we've actually got a maritime climate, which is due to the location of the two rivers that we've got here, so the Garonne and the Sillon. And what happens is that it creates the conditions for the development of what we call noble rot or botrytis. You get a fog that develops in the autumn when the cooler waters of the Sillon, which is here, run into the slightly warmer Garonne, and in the evening, the mist and the moisture in the air wet the grapes overnight, which provokes the development of this fungus called botrytis, or rather more euphemistically, noble rot. By noon, the mists mostly give way to the sun and the grapes dry out, and so they're sort of arrested from any further rottenness. But this is a bunch of grapes that have been affected by noble rot. A couple of things to notice there. First of all, you can see that those that have clearly been affected are really, really shriveled up. That's because the grapes that are used in Sauternes are all white grapes. You basically got the majority of Semillon and the balance being made up from Sauvignon Blanc and muscadel, and the spores of the fungus just attack the skins, which are quite thin, and so moisture escapes from the body of the grape, leaving a much more concentrated juice in the middle of the grape, and also changes the flavor profile slightly. And as you can imagine, the amount of volume of wine that you can get out of the grapes is much, much reduced. As a rule of thumb, for a regular vine, you might get a bottle of wine per vine. For Sauterne, the same quantity of vine would yield probably just about a glass of wine. So you can imagine that's going to increase the costs quite a bit. The other thing is that it increases the labor cost, because these all have to be hand harvested. Now here's a picture to show you of what happens. So there's the river in the background, and here's that blanket of humidity rolling over the vines, which is just spreading this beneficial fungus, but it's a kind of fine-edged balance, and you don't want to let it overdo it. So it's a lot of observation, a lot of hand harvesting is done. They actually have what they call passes. So when it comes to harvest time, you might remember from the previous picture I showed you, not all the grapes were at the same level of ripeness. So one of the rules of Sauterne is you can't have grapes that are not affected by botrytis. So you have to keep going backwards and forwards, up and down the vines, only picking the grapes that have reached the appropriate stage of noble rot. So one of the reasons I wanted to show you this picture of the Sauterne Chateau is to show you the relative location of Chateau Rieussec there and Chateau d'Yquem. Now, Chateau d'Yquem is the top of the top as far as Sauterne wines are concerned. They are very, very well sought after, very expensive, and you'd have to pay an awful lot of money for some of their wines. But Chateau Rieussec, which we have here, is actually ranking alongside them as one of the richest and most exotic of all the Sauterne wines, producing particularly good wines since they've been taken over by the Baron de Rothschild since the mid-1980s. It's actually located at one of the highest points of Sauterne, where its vineyards actually border those of Chateau d'Yquem. They've got about 75 hectares of vineyards planted with 89% Semillon, 8% Sauvignon Blanc, and 3% Muscadel. The yields are low, and the grapes are fermented in stainless steel tanks and then oak casks before being matured in oak barriques. A balance of new and old barriques for between 18 months and 2 years. So you see, the whole production process takes a long time and is very labor intensive. So this results in a classic full-bodied Sauterne that's got a lovely golden yellow color and packed with lusciously sweet honeyed fruits, touch of marmalade, touch of apricot. This is a wine where you really only need a very small amount. This is classified as a Premier Cru Classé, and at its best, it actually rivals the vintages from Chateau d'Yquem. So, on to the actual wine itself. As you can see there, there's Rieussec and there's Chateau d'Yquem. And if you've got your bike with you, it'll only take you a few minutes to cycle the just over 2 kilometers between one and t'other. The appellation rules in Sauterne specify, amongst other things, that you've got to have a certain planting density, and you've got to have a yield that is kept to no more than 25 hectolitres per hectare. And in reality, it's very rare to reach half of that. Such is the minute quantity of wine that can be effectively produced from the grapes there. Additionally, you've got to have a must weight, which means the amount of sugar in there, of 221 grams of sugar per litre. And above all that, you've got to make sure that all those grapes that you harvest have got that noble rot present. On a very rare occasion, if the yield is bad and the sugar is too little, you can interestingly utilize cryo extraction, which is where the grapes are frozen prior to pressing in order to concentrate the must even more. That process is actually imitation of really what happens with ice wine. But in certainly most years in recent living memory, that hasn't had to be the case, because the natural sweetness that remains in the grape once its botrytis has affected it and harvested takes it way above that.
Yeah, well, I will say, Tim, such is making a Sauternes, it's quite difficult. It's not easy, vintage on vintage.
No.
And in 2012, Chateau Yquem made no wine, couldn't do it. So it's certainly labour intensive, as you say. And a difficult job for sure.
It's a rare thing, and almost a labour of love. So whilst we're picking up Sauternes in general and Chateau Yquem in particular, a few years ago, a bottle of 1811 Chateau Yquem was purchased. How much did it go for? It was actually sold in London. Was it 25, 35, 45, 55, 65, or 75,000 pounds? That's for a bottle. So that's a lot of money for a glass. Don't spill a drop. Okay, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, the majority who voted suggested it was £65,000. Actually, it was £75,000. That was back in 2011. It was the most expensive bottle of white wine. There have been more expensive bottles of red wine since, but most expensive bottle of white wine according to the Guinness Book of Records. So, after that chat, let's have a slurp. The one thing about a sweet wine such as this, although it is indeed sweet, you really don't need very much of it. But there's an immense amount of acidity there, which gives it a much nicer attack when you're pairing it against something that's fatty like cheese. And the best friend of something like Sauternes is a salty blue cheese. So the sweetness is tempered by the saltiness of the cheese. Roquefort, Stilton, Bleu d'Auvergne, Saint-Agur, those sort of cheeses just go so well with this. And you've got some really complex and delicious flavors there. You've got chocolate. Not sure. You can certainly try chocolate. You could certainly try creme brulee. But the great thing is to experiment really with different things to mix and match.
Yeah, I mean, generally, chocolate and Sauternes is a bit of a no-go. Although it can work with kind of chocolate-based desserts, but not together. Not kind of a bar of chocolate Sauternes. Doesn't quite work. But Tim, I would say excellent choice and a treat really. That's one of the finest wines in Bordeaux. Riesec. I mean, the 08, it's a good vintage. It's not the greatest vintage, but an absolute privilege to taste. So much going on. Some incredible, really.
I think you can just keep going back to it. As I said, you really don't need very much. Just have a tiny sip, and you've got flavors. Range from floral flavors, honey, tangerine.
I'll get like a pineapple upside down cake thing.
Yeah, definitely that sort of
that kind of thing. But,
almost like a touch of sponge with brioche in there as well. Yeah. And then there's this classic apricot and orange marmalade. That's the thing that really kind of lingers.
Yeah, but as you say, you can keep going back, and it's so complex. You'll find something else jumping out the glass. Really good.
Yeah. So, and this is a bargain. Now, bearing in mind how much Chateau tends to go for. Even the more recent vintages will go for quite a lot of money. We've got this currently on sale for just over £20 a bottle. Actually, it's a bottle, but it's a half-size bottle, as you really don't need very much. So there's not huge volumes of this stuff made either. So I'm pleased that Paletti says goes well with a salty roquefort. Yeah, that's one of the absolute classics. Don't normally like sweet wine, but that's awesome. I'm so pleased because if you say we've got a sweet wine, a lot of people who've not tried Sauternes might think, do you know what? It's going to be a bit sticky, isn't it? But because of the acidity there, that just keeps it nice and fresh.
Yeah.
So, and actually, it's more versatile than you might think as well. The classic pairings are things like foie gras, if you still eat foie gras, at one end of the meal, or blue cheese at the other. And in the middle of the meal, it goes extremely well, would you believe, with Asian spices and strongly herbal flavored poultry, things like that. You can actually, if you've got a nice menu appropriately chosen, you can actually try and pair Sauternes all the way through. A bit of an indulgence, but there we go. Okay. Keep your comments coming, as long as they're nice. And I'm going to hand back to Cal now to tell us the things that he normally tells us right at the beginning of the evening. Yeah, so you can't get away with it.
Usually this, beginning of the tasting, but thought we'd mix it up a bit. Now we've got over 80 participants this evening, which is great. So, very, very, very pleased. It's going well, the virtual tastings, but a lot of which are new, not only new to the tastings, but new to Nichols and Perks. So, it's definitely time for me to give a bit of an introduction to the company that Tim and I work for. Now, we're located in Stourbridge, which is a small town in the West Midlands. We're actually one of the oldest wine and spirit merchants in the UK, and in fact, the world, dating back to 1797, when William Nichols first began trading as a wine and spirit merchant. Now, the company has actually been in my family since 1945, when it was purchased by my great-grandfather, William Gardner. And there are now members of the third and fourth generations at the helm, with myself being a member of the fourth generation. Now, we're actually still located in the original 16th century premises you see before you. This is owned outright by the company these days and holds a small retail shop, our offices, and our famous 16th century cellars. If you've not had the chance to visit us, which I'm sure we haven't locked down, when you have, you won't regret it. Now, as a business, it's quite a complex business, to be fair, a lot of different aspects and layers to the business, but we are predominantly fine wine and fine spirits specialists, with a keen focus on the wines of France, Italy, Spain, Portugal, etc. However, we do offer wines from all over the world and export to well over 50 different countries worldwide every year these days. Now, as well as offering fine wine to private customers such as yourselves and other members of the trade, we supply wine to the on-trade, Michelin-star restaurants when they're open. We offer fine wine investment programs, offer fine wines futures or en primeur. We're now hosting well over 100 different wine and spirit events each year, as Tim can attest to. But yeah, on top of that, I will add or reiterate that we're actually in the middle of our annual fine wine sale, and this will go on till the 1st of March. There are still loads of excellent buys, so get online and enjoy. And finally, one other thing, for any kind of fine wine inquiries, you can contact me directly at sales@nicholsandperks.co.uk. I'm always happy to help.
Splendid. Thanks for that. Well, there's a bit of subliminal advertising there, just to remind you that the February sale continues. There are some genuine bargains there. There are things that we're selling in the February sale that even I couldn't buy at my normal staff discount. So this is a genuine opportunity to stock up on some fabulous wines. So yeah, I think hopefully you've all enjoyed this evening, and whether it's organic, whether it's biodynamic, or whether it's just carefully made wine, all these examples that we've seen are made by people who really care about what they do. So moving on from that, here's what we've got coming up over the next few weeks and months. You will, of course, be receiving reminders and notifications about these. Have a look at our website. We have got quite a nice range of things coming up, from Old World, Burgundy, a few special ones here with some direct chateau involvement from some friends of ours in Chateau's Chasse Spleen, with the redoubtable Jean-Pierre Foubet, who made kind of a very interesting offer. But what did he say to you?
What did he say? We were talking about selecting the wines for this tasting, and he replied, said, "You can have anything you want from me, apart from my money or my body." That's what he said.
I'm not sure what disappointed you most. But,
both probably.
And another great one is Bruno Collin, which is again a provider, well, a winemaker that Nichols and Burke's been working with for many, many years now. So lots of really nice stuff coming up there. So what I'm going to do now is to stop the screen share and see all you lovely people there. Oh, one other thing, whilst we do that, before you all go, I'm just going to ask you to give a little tick to your favourites. This is a multiple choice, so you can vote for as many as you want. Just so that we can get a bit of an idea of what went down particularly well with you guys. There are no right or wrong answers, so it's just for us.
Sorry. Things on, isn't it?
Just wait for you to compose your thoughts. I'm just going to give you 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Thanks for that. Okay, well, everyone's a winner, particularly the Chateau Riesec, so that's nice to see. So Liz has asked, are all the wines available on our website? Yes, they are. From time to time, particularly when there is a sale on, some people tend to fill their boots, and from time to time the wines briefly disappear. But I know that we've recently had some of the Gruner Veltliner and Terrain in as well, Everine. So I know we've got a little bit of stock of that, but these are not produced in volumes like supermarket type wines. So without labouring the point too much, do get on there. You should all have had your discount codes. I emailed those out today. If you think you haven't received them, check your junk folders or spam folders or whatever other folders are blocking Nichols and Burke emails to you, because you've all had your discount vouchers and they do work. Right. Well, there's loads of you there. Hello, everybody. Glenn said we didn't mention the proof of each wine. Chateau Riesec is 13.5%. I think they're all this evening. They're all about between 13 and 14%.
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah, I mean the Sep's 13.5, the Chilean's 14. I think the Dolcetto is probably 13.5, and Cairo around 14. So yeah, all between 13 and 14, really. Yeah.
Well, shall I kick off by saying that my wife Janice doesn't like Sauternes, except she does now.
Oh, excellent. Well, I think the risk of repeating myself, Sauternes is a sort of acquired taste. It's, I think, important to pair it with something savoury. And then when you do that, the sweetness is kind of slightly diminished, and then you get all these lovely flavours coming out. So I'm pleased that your wife likes it now.
I think sometimes it does get served up with pudding, doesn't it? And then that's just too much.
Yeah, I know we tend to refer to them, or they are referred to as dessert wines, and actually it can cause problem because the two things can clash. You've got very sweet wine and something sweet, then the wine, it just doesn't work. Really sweet things go very well with salty and savoury things. I mean, think of port, for example. Port's very sweet, and what do you ideally pair that with Christmas time? Stilton. So I mean, you could substitute in terms of what you pair Sauterne with port in many ways.
So short of a glass of water, what would you suggest putting with pudding?
Well, it depends on the pudding. I suppose if you could try things like a very sweet sherry or Malmsey or a very sweet Madeira, something like that. Something like Sauterne will probably go with creme brulee, which is a little bit lighter. You've got the sugar, caramelized burnt sugar on top of creme brulee. It'll just about work with that.
Yeah.
You're talking to somebody who hasn't got a particularly sweet tooth as far as
I think Sauterne, it's versatile. It will go with plenty of desserts. Just
the thing is, I've had that in a Michelin-starred restaurant. I had a sweet wine and with a dessert, and it made me feel really ill. Personally, I think I was very surprised about Roquefort, for example, but it's gone really well with it. I feel really good.
Yeah. I think
something tonight. Yeah.
Good. Well, I think Roquefort and Sauterne is one of the absolute classic matches because Roquefort by itself, you've got a lot of creaminess there. So again, with the acidity that you've got in the Sauterne really cuts through that sticky creaminess, so that balances your palate, and then you've got the saltiness and the slight earthiness, and the fruity marmalade, apricot, honey type flavors are just great. I mean, if you've ever tried drizzling honey on top of something like Stilton or Roquefort and then toasting it or putting it under the grill. Yeah, if you haven't got any Sauterne to hand, then that's the next best thing as far as getting the flavours are concerned.
On top of cheese under the grill.
Don't grill the Sauterne now.
No, drink it.
That's right. You don't want to do that. Yeah.
Finish off that drop of Sauterne.
Yep.
Tim, what's your pick then from this evening's wines?
Well, I've always got a soft spot for the Riesling, I must admit, because I think it's given what goes into it, I think it's such tremendous value, and you really don't need to knock back huge volumes of it. You get tremendous amounts of bang for your buck as far as the taste is concerned. And I do like blue cheese, and I do like pate, so those things tend to go extremely well. I very much liked the Gruner Fentliner as well. That was really unusual. I like the way the whole thing comes together in quite an unusual way. It's not sort of one-dimensional wine. It really opens out a lot, I think. But that's just me. What do other people think?
Well, I would say, I mean, like you say, it's very hard to look beyond the Riesling. I mean, it's unbelievable, but I think that Dolcetto is excellent for particularly for the money in terms of value for money.
Yeah.
Outstanding. Loads going on. Really good.
Yeah, I'll go with that.
It's a shame because in Austria they produce so many wines, but you simply can't buy them here. We went to Vienna, and Vienna is the only city in the world with its own vineyards. And you just can't get them here. You can get a Gruner Veltliner, but that's it, basically. They do a lot of reds. You can't get them, well, in my experience.
Yeah, they do a lot of like Zweigelt, which is kind of similar style to Pinot, but Austrian wine, it's definitely getting noticed, and I think you'll see more and more soon. The whites are excellent. There's a thing called Rota Veltliner as well, which is indigenous to Wagram, which I think we got some of that online. That's really good. The Riesling's also very good, as I say. But yeah, I think people are beginning to realise, particularly sommeliers, that's their, Austria is a massive thing at the moment. I reckon soon there'll be you'll see plenty around, such as the quality, as you say.
Lovely. Yeah.
We went to a food and wine tasting when we happened to be in Zagreb a couple of summers ago, and the Croats make a lot of wine, which was really nice. And maybe that was just because it was our summer holiday, but you know, they deliberately don't seem to want to sell it to anybody apart from themselves.
I think that's always part of the problem. Yeah, they want to keep keep it for themselves. That is true. That's always going to be a battle. To be fair. Yeah.
Some countries just ship the rough stuff.
Well, we can leave that if you want. Well, it's about 1:30 anyway, isn't it?
Yes, don't feel obliged to hang around. We just thought it's nice having made you look at ourselves and the slideshow for an hour and a half, or very nearly. Gives you a
Nice to
chance
talk to other people, isn't it, Tim?
Yeah, absolutely.
Plus,
So-
well, you're in lockdown as well, so I guess you're enjoying talking to other people.
I think you can get out of the habit of talking to other people. This is
Yes.
Yeah.
I do have an awful lot of cheese left to eat, which is really good because I will die of cheese poisoning one day. I've nearly been there, but
What a way to go. Well, Neil, if you get online quickly, we can dispatch some wine to make sure that your cheese is not lonely when it's been consumed.
yes, well, I made some purchases after the last tasting, so you never know.
Yeah, you got your vouchers, guys. Go and make the most of the sale.
Can I ask you, I
Sure,
can't see the Sauterne on the website other than by the case. Is that right?
Are you in there's two different views. There's like a retail view and an in-bond view.
Oh, okay.
If you click the retail view, hopefully you'll see some bottles as well.
No, that's coming up as a case as well.
So is it giving a kind of inclusive duty and VAT price? The case?
Yeah, it says 15 available,
372 quid.
372 for 24 bottles.
Okay, yeah, so it means the bottle stock sold out, but we can easily pull some out of bond for you on Monday.
Okay,
So best thing to do, drop myself or Tim a message and we'll make sure we'll get some for you.
that's perfect. Thank you.
We won't force you to buy a case.
Well, yeah, as much as we liked it, I don't think we'll drink that amount of wine.
Fair enough.
Yeah, we like to be reasonable. No, as Cal said, we've got some in stock in bond, so we can get some broken down into bottles from cases within a few short days. So if you put your order in or send us an email, then we'll get that organised for you.
That'd be great. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Get an order to you tomorrow, Cal.
Perfect, Stuart. You enjoy it?
Yeah.
Very good. Very good.
Good, I'm glad.
This evening.
Excellent. I'll put you down for 10 tickets for the next one then, Stu.
Oh, well, of course.
Cheers.
Thank you so much. That was
Okay.
really good as usual.
Charlotte, how you doing?
Very well. How are you?
Not too bad. You enjoy that?
Yeah, as usual.
What was your favourite?
We liked the dessert wine actually, but my mum really liked, is it the Sep?
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
Cool.
Yeah. And then me and my dad's like anything red. But hopefully see you in a pub where we can drink soon.
Yeah, definitely. I can't wait for that.
Very much.
Thanks, Gal.
See you later, guys.
See you later.
Okay.
Right. Well, I think we're reaching that time now where it's probably just about time to say once again, thanks very much indeed for your support and attention this evening. And we hope to see you in virtual terms again pretty soon. We, as you know, have these things occurring about once a fortnight, which keeps us out of mischief in the lockdown. So we will be seeing you same time, same channel in about a couple of weeks' time.
Yeah, thanks very much. Lovely.
Cheers,
evening.
guys. Good to see you.
Thanks a lot.
Cheers.
Bye.
Cheerio, everyone. Bye now.